let's get into some of these big name fights now, man. As much as I want to kind of move quickly into this one, because as much as I loved Ronaldo Souza, I think this is a fight where you're seeing him take that last opportunity to really see if he belongs in the UFC. He's another guy similar to, like we said about Venado. When you look at the losses, I mean, they're big names, but you have to tell yourself the last real big win was against Chris Weidman. It's been like 2-3 years since then. And now you're seeing him go up against, some of the guys who are not doing well against the top 5, but are finishing him in the way they did in Kevin Holland, right? That's where you have to say, yes, is Ronaldo Souza outside of the top 10 right now? It seems so. There's some real good, hungry fighters right now, at least in that top 5, top 6, where I think there's killers now where if Souza's not on his A game, he seems to be, on the outside looking in. Now, with Muniz, you have a guy with good length. He has pretty good striking, but I think that the power is not really there. The big thing for me is the jiu-jitsu. I think he's one of those classic guys that's willing to take a good amount of damage to be able to lock in some good submissions. If you're not careful and get too hungry with trying to finish him, he's going to make you pay. I think we've seen that a couple times in his career. And again, that's what makes this fight, I just kind of went on a rant about how good I think the UFC matchmaking is. This is a great one, right? I'd be lying if I said if I don't want either of these guys to really get knocked out and kind of watch 3 good rounds of them rolling, I think it would be fun, right? How many more fights do we really have to see Souza in the UFC? Why not make him count? This is a guy that I've watched, BJJ tournaments and matches on YouTube of. So I would love to see, a couple more matches where he can kind of utilize that in the MMA game. It was fun when it was happening when he was a bit younger and kind of in that more game time shape. I think in this case now you're seeing a guy come off, 3 straight wins. Now, the Fabinski fight for me is a big one because Fabinski's really big into the judo. He's a pretty good wrestler, hates striking, doesn't really want to do it, and always is pushing the fight up against the fence and try to take you to the ground. So that top position for him is such a big move from a judo background. But I think that was a, first round armbar for Andre was a huge, statement after coming off of that decision win over Arroyo. Arroyo is an interesting fighter, right? He's got those big kicks, things like that, but he tires out. And, Darren Wynn, who's such a big time wrestler, was able to really have his way with him. And then prior to that, the Taylor Johnson, contender series fight, that was one where you really see him just take so much damage. And even in the announcers, they're kind of, really talking about Taylor and how much power he's got behind the punches and how much, how good he looks with just pushing that pace, things like that. But, Muniz wasn't taking much damage at all, and he was able to lock up a submission pretty well. That was a very, very impressive fight. Obviously got the contract. Now he's, back-to-back contender series fights in that led into his 2-0 UFC record. So that's the best part about his game. I like that he's actually had that kind of experience already. When you think about it, is that 4-0 in the UFC? I don't really think so, because we talked about how the Dana White contender series is kind of the G League where guys are trying to come in and hit that brink. So I think I said 3-0 earlier. This is definitely a 2-0 contender series fighter and then 2-0 in the UFC. But now he gets a tough fight against Ronaldo Souza, a guy who can definitely shape up on the ground with him. And if the power is still there in those strikes, I mean, Muniz has to be careful. He's been able to knock out some really good strikers with, chins that we find out a bit later in their careers are questionable. I think that this is a fight where if it stays standing, Souza should have the advantage. But again, it's hard not to go against the guy like Muniz, who's on the come up, against the guy like Souza, who we know what we can expect from him. And if he's not there for all 3 rounds, I think this is a fight where Muniz can just exploit him completely. So, we'll take a look at the lines right now. I think there's pretty good understanding of who these fighters are, what they've accomplished already in their careers. I think that Souza's in big need of a win, especially some of the more recent losses that he's had. But looking at these lines, I'm hoping that there's some competitive advantage here, but my bad. So yeah, it looks like the line's open here up for Jacare Souza's a -120 favorite, with Andre Muniz coming in as a +100. But now this line's basically a favorite. So my hunch was pretty much correct. It looks like Muniz, even as a +100 dog, was getting some bump. And now you're seeing the lines float between -105 and -115 for Muniz. And you can say the same thing for Souza, who might hit that -115, -120 range. So, if you're the vet guy, if your heart gets into it, like I said, I have no idea who I might pick. I'm leaning Muniz from a business perspective, but heart might get in the way. I might not publicly want to take a guy like Souza. So, if there's a betting advantage here, I would definitely say a potential under looks really good. I think that Muniz is able to end this fight in the early rounds if he can get it to the ground, especially if Souza's tired. But, Souza's got the striking, and if for any reason he's able to get this fight to the ground as well and work some ground and pound and not really feel threatened by the the submissions. I think that's a fight for Souza to win. I think it plays right into his hands. So the pick'em makes sense. Whichever way you're leaning, I'm hoping to find out. Be sure to leave them in the comments. But check out SookyMMA on Instagram for my final picks come Saturday.